Chapter 19. Some Things Personal. As this is a record of success in my particular line of endeavor, and an urge to others, it may be well to set down something about my private life, my idiosyncrasies, habits, and desires, as these are related to what I have gained by success. I have always been an addict to work. I love work as other men love play. It is both my occupation and my recreation. As a boy, the necessity for self-support after school hours kept me from the playgrounds. As a man, my desire to learn all that I could about salesmanship has kept me from wasting time. The only game I ever learned is business. To me, it has been all-absorbing. I have never played baseball, golf, or tennis. My mother's Scotch Presbyterianism prohibited dancing, cards, and theaters, and I have never in later years learned to enjoy them. I have owned automobiles since their earliest introduction, but I rarely drive myself. My chief philanthropy has been teaching boys and men to love work. I have long been interested in an association which takes delinquent boys from the juvenile courts and puts them to work on a farm. It has saved many hundreds of boys in that way. In going to Chicago from my country home, I arrive at 6 o'clock in the morning. For years I went immediately to Grant Park, where scores of tramps were sleeping on newspapers, and I spent an hour or more in trying to interest them in work. I am a director of the Volunteers of America, and my particular interest is in prison work. I have accompanied Maud Ballington Booth in her lectures in Joliet Prison. I have helped to support Hope House in Chicago, a temporary home for the prisoners we get out on parole. My principal contribution to that effort has been a Sunday afternoon lecture on the joy of work. I have written magazine articles to argue that both boys and girls should work. I have ever insisted that my unmarried sister keep at work as I do for the sake of her happiness. She is still teaching in the high schools of Grand Rapids. I sent one of my daughters to work on the stage. The other one married soon after graduation from Smith College. She went on to work as a mother, then as president of women's clubs, 2 at one time, then to some extent as a lecturer. My wife works some 14 hours a day. She is our chief gardener and as such has developed the finest flower gardens in Michigan. Hundreds of people from near and far come to view them every summer. She manages a large country home, which is always filled with guests. We figured that we serve here 3,500 breakfasts in a summer season. She is also a musician, devoting to her practice some 6 hours a day. In Chicago, she is famous as a charity worker. When we had unmarried daughters, our house was filled with young men on vacation. I let them know that I did not approve of their idleness. My arguments sent many of them to work in their college vacations, acquiring habits to aid their careers, and I have the satisfaction of knowing that in that way I helped many of them to success. They found that pocketing orders was more fun than pocketing balls, that winning a contract was better than winning a trophy. My confinement to business has not been due to any love of money or fame. I have not even had a conscious desire to succeed. Money means nothing to me, save that my Scotch instinct rebels at waste. I do not even want to leave it to my children. They already have what is good for them. I want their husbands to have the joy that I had of making their own success, so I do not deprive them of any incentive. I long lived in utter poverty, where hunger and I were pals. When I entered business, I had to miss 2 meals a week to pay my laundry bills. I have also lived in luxury, spending as high as $140,000 a year. It has made little difference to me. I was as happy in one condition as the other. I do not think we can go back to humble conditions without pangs, but I am sure that men can be as happy on one plateau as another. The happiest man I know is a neighbor of mine who never made more than $125 per month. Out of that, he saved enough to build 6 small houses, which he rents. Then he retired on the income. He spends his summers on my lake, working in his gardens, his winters in Florida. I often go down to his cottage for a lesson in content. Until the income tax was established, I kept no record of my earnings. Their volume meant nothing to me. Their ups and downs did not affect me in the least. My wife collects all my revenues and pays all the bills. I never sign a check. I have not the slightest idea of the money invested in my country place or the cost of any item. Knowing these costs would make me unhappy because of something mother bred in me, but the general realization that these things cost much money does not affect me at all. In my personal expenses, I am very economical. I have always dressed rather shabbily. Until my wife rebelled, I wore ready-made clothes. Now I dodge expensive tailors. At the present writing, I have not had a new suit in 2 years. My limit on shoes is $6.50. When I go to a hotel, I order in a modest way. This is all recited to indicate that my incentive for work was not money, nor was it fame or position. I care nothing for either out here in the woods among simple people where I have built my home. All things are handicaps which in any way seem to place me above my fellows. Here in the country, we all meet on equality. I have worked for the fun of working and because work became a habit with me. Then later in business because I realized that somebody had to do a deal of hard work to get advertising out of its swaddling clothes. Lord and Thomas first offered me a position when I was 25, living in Grand Rapids. I went to Chicago to discuss the opportunity with the founders of the business. The agency had no copywriters then. It was largely a brokerage business, bidding against other agencies on a fixed amount of space. The advertisers prepared their own ads and sent electrotypes. The profitable part of the business was in developing schemes to get advertisers to spend money. The proposition was made to me because I had proved myself a scheme man in the Bissell Carpet Sweeper Company. There was no thought of profit to the advertiser. I was young and inexperienced, but I had sense enough to realize that such ideas of advertising could not go far. My training had already taught me the necessity for traceable results. So I declined the proposition of Lord and Thomas, with its 60% increase in salary, and continued my struggles to sell products at a profit. It was 16 years thereafter when Lord and Thomas, under different auspices, again invited me to join them. What have I gained by these many years of exceptional application? I have gained what others gain by medical research, by spending their lives in a laboratory. My life work has been research in advertising. Now I have the privilege of setting down my findings for the men who follow me. I have the hope that the record will save to many the mistakes of the pioneers and the years that I spent to correct them. I have gained what Thomas A. Edison has gained by his 20 hours a day, the satisfaction of knowing that I have discovered some enduring principles. Many argue that advertising is changing, that the times call for something new. Certainly the tempo of life in America is changing. Fads, fancies, and desires change like a kaleidoscope. Certain styles in advertising are changing. It is and always has been necessary to give to every campaign a different keynote. Imitators never succeed. But human nature does not change. The principles set down in this book are as enduring as the Alps. Advertising is far more difficult than it used to be because the cost is higher and there is so much able competition. But every new difficulty increases the necessity for scientific advertising. As I write this, I look down a beautiful lake to which I first came as a boy of 6. At the end is a village, once a lumbering town, where my grandfather was the Baptist minister. Within my view are the hills which I plowed as a boy, still clothed with the vineyards which I picked. Here my uncle had a fruit farm which became my home. Here I worked every summer and some winters until I went into business. Here reside still some of my boyhood playmates. Down there is a point which used to have a dock. From that dock I used to load as high as 1,800 baskets of peaches in a day. From that dock I took the boat one night at the age of 18, tears streaming down my cheeks, to enter the world of business. Many hard years went by before I saw this boyhood home again. Then the homing instinct brought me back. I bought a bluff of virgin forest, which I had always loved as a boy, and named it Piney Crest. There I built my home, which for 17 years I have enlarged and developed into a paradise. A half mile of flower gardens extend into the lake. The lawns are always alive with delightful friends, relatives, and grandchildren. Here I do what I love to do in beautiful surroundings. Here a mile apart are the contrasts to show what I have gained by my efforts. Here remain some who never dared to show me what might have been. Here is my motherland, here my tabernacle, here my home. I am sure that no man has gained more from life than I have, more of true happiness and content. I trace that to the love of simple things, of common people, which made my success in advertising. Here at our weekend parties, I meet many successful men in a most intimate way. I envy none of them. The happiest are those who live closest to nature and essential to advertising success. So I conclude that this vocation, depending as it does on love and knowledge of the masses, offers many rewards beyond money.